Raise your hand if you knew that Dr. King spoke here at Villanova. Yeah? So he did. So we have one learning lesson already happening. Pretty cool. So on the left, that is like the current student body president. I forget his name at the top of my head at the moment. And then on the right, we have the current, who was then the current president of the university. And he was on the front page of the Villanova. And so it's 1965. Quick story. What's kind of crazy is Villanova didn't technically celebrate the day. I was here, so fall of '99 is when I came in. Around 2001, I was a Student Government Association Diversity Chairperson, which is like a new title back then. Now you hear diversity like as you eat breakfast and Rice Krispies, it's like Rice Krispies diversity. It's like just a part of everyday language, but back then it wasn't. And we didn't celebrate Dr. King Day, kind of crazy, right? Being that it was a federal holiday. I don't know if this is on. You're recording, cool. This is gonna be so funny to look back on this video. So he spoke in '65, but it wasn't 2001. That was interesting, and I sat on the committee along with Christine Gerchow, who was the student body president, and I was the diversity chairperson. And does anyone know Dr. Terry Nance? Does that ring a bell? Awesome, right? So she was here even way before me, so she's older than me. And she was amazing back then, she's amazing now. And she said, I've been sitting on this committee and trying to talk about this day since my kid was, I don't know, maybe in diapers, and now he's about ready to drive, and now I'm sure he probably has maybe kids of his own, and that's how long we've been talking about this. But there was this incredible resistance, right? Which to me was such a disconnect from having like a Christian school, Augustinian school, from Dr. King's theological background, and then also being a federal holiday. So that was like interesting. That was my first kind of moment where I said, like, why is this happening? And I wonder, and that was back in the day when I only knew about Dr. King insofar as his kind of like watered down I Have a Dream speech before I got into his really, really deep social justice work, right? And how he worked with Malcolm X and deeper philosophies. So today, it's going to be a super quick overview, and you're just going to have to kind of pull out where you see elements of history, where you see elements of politics, where you see elements of law and social justice and pop culture and how they intersect. So that's on you guys, because those are thematic things that, especially when you're freshmen and you have this ancient medieval Renaissance thought, core humanities, something that you have to have, some sort of freshman class, right? And so you have all those thematic intersects that you always look at. So that's a part of your knowledge and growth process. To learn how to pull them out. And recently I've gotten more into Dr. King and his work pertaining to the Indigenous and Native Americans. So when I was here, again, I thought I was going to college, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get to school, and they're going to, I'm going to learn all about Native American history, right? And my dad is Native American, my mother's not. My mother's white, and I thought, okay, I've learned all about her history and K-12 education. I'm going to get to Villanova, and man, I am going to learn some cool stuff about Native people. It did not exactly happen like that per se. So really, it was me and having to start the Native American Student Association, which BTW, I'll try to plug that in about 2.7 more times in case anyone wants to restart that. You don't have to be Native American. It would look really good on your curriculum vitae and resume. And it would restart it, and there's so much cool stuff happening in this world today, especially as it relates to Indigenous people, right? I think I have a photo in here of the first meeting that we had. You guys want to pass them around? I'm squinting in this one, and this was upstairs. How cool. So like, be careful with them, probably need white gloves and don't breathe them, they're gonna disintegrate because they're like so old. But that was like the first Native American Student Association meeting when you were probably just being born. And that was right upstairs. And it was probably taken on one of these types of cameras because that's legit what we had to use back then. The first one was like, you were kind of cool, but then it got better because you could take it in water. And then if you were really, really fancy, I had one of these disposable cameras, because why? We did not have cell phones on that level, right? It wasn't like a one-stop, gotta check my email, can do my homework, and also take a picture at the same time. Computers. What did computers look like when I was here? Those are the computer labs. Maybe one worked, maybe one didn't, in the basement of Tollentine at 2 o'clock in the morning. If you're really cool, you had something that looked like one of these bad boys. Makendra's like, coach. Does anyone know what this was? That's so sad. No? No takers? Okay, Napster. Does that ring a bell? Never even heard of Napster. Every year these presentations get slightly more difficult to relate to me. So that's where you could get music online. There were landmark cases, and it was a big thing, and you would go online to get Napster, and it was just like a whole situation legally, because you were downloading artist music, right? So no iTunes, no whatever. She was just that. These guys were just coming out, and now they have a kid. So again, base of reference. But here's what's cool, and here's where I kind of, again, bridge that intersect. So this was right around, this was a few years prior, but this is Indigenous Imagery, right? Atlanta Braves baseball team. So as much as all that technology we laugh at and think, okay, that's really changed, and those perceptions have really changed, we're like, that technology is so crazy old, we don't even know what Napster is. Indigenous Imagery, that kind of hasn't changed, right? Still the Atlanta Braves, still has that type of mascot. So here's these headdresses. Does anyone know what this is? Peter Pan, right? Okay, so some cartoons and things that I grew up with in my age group. Books that were in the school system. They started off on the left side. They started off what that word is on the right side. They kind of amalgamated into the word on the left side. So when I was a little kid, my dad's floating around here somewhere, probably lost. And when I was a little kid, they kind of transferred the name and became 10 Little Indians, Agatha Christie. So my Native American dad came into school, and I had to go to the office at like age 5. I was somewhere down around here because I remember my feet dangling off the chair. And like, why am I in trouble? And why is my dad this activist dad that always has to come into school and just make a scene? And kind of, can't I just be like every other kid, right? And then here's some imagery that was going on literally in the 80s when I was growing up. You guys were like a twinkle in your parents' eye. So it was reinforced. So it's like you have it in sports, and then you have it in media, and then you have it in advertisement, right? And you start to see these images over and over again, and it really starts to desensitize you to what's going on. Then you have these holidays, right? There's a handful of them. That's mine. I did not grow up on one side of my family, at least anyway, celebrating the day. You totally can, but maybe come from an informed perspective. So you have Thanksgiving is a day that kind of really hasn't changed in terms of everyone celebrating it, right? Columbus Day hasn't really changed an incredible amount. I was still kind of fighting it back then. We still are today. That's my favorite one. And humor, by the way, is just in every culture, specifically indigenous cultures, is the way that they kind of get through a lot of the travesties, genocide, et cetera, right? Gotta love Chris Rock. But in response to a lot of things that's going on, it's not just about the humor of it, right? It's about what was the indigenous response. And it's so cool, because like Twitter definitely was not around when I was your age, but it's the response to what's going on. Humor is one way to do it, but there's actual efforts to rename the day to Indigenous Peoples Day all throughout the country, right? There are efforts that you can link up with. Like, you totally don't have to be Native American. It's like, we don't discriminate. You're on Team Us, we'll be on Team You, and you can come out and support us. The mascots are still the same mascot issue as what I lectured on last year. It's one of my near and dear issues. I was all about it when I was your age, and I still am today, still fighting the struggle. And there's people out there, and you can march with them, and you can create visibility, and you can change those perceptions and paradigms. There are people that have created Indigenous appropriation, so there's like a lot of cool, kitschy, native-looking clothes, right? And people with this organization kind of combat these images, which we see in media, specifically. I don't know what's up to headdressing. It's like a very cool thing, right, to like wear. It's everywhere. Chloe is one of my homegirl chronic offenders, but she's kind of coming around. But I was like, Pharrell, even you too, bro? Come on, like, you were like a race in the hole here that was not supposed to be about this. You know, so it's everywhere that you constantly see these images, and so you go, okay, well, what's sacred and what's respectful, and when are you causing harm? And I think it's really interesting too, in the theme of some of the elements of Freedom School. I like the apology without the apology, the response. we're sorry that that's greatly upset individuals. So like not like Native nations or people or whatever, but we're sorry that you were pissed because it's like your fault type of a deal. You know what I mean? So that lack of kind of understanding. And then you see it everywhere. Like I'm sure you're at the age where maybe music concerts and, you know, Coachella, that's not where I live. I don't know what's here. And everyone is just into wearing it. So you see all these images all the time. You start to think, well, what's really the big deal? So it desensitizes you. Art is another way in the thematic representations that we talked about with Native Americans of how we counterbalance these images with maybe our own art forms and our own images and owning them. And then, but you still, so what do? Columbus Day, Thanksgiving, still got Halloween. That's always a fun one. And then these mascots are everywhere, right? This is a quick timeline. And I'm going to consolidate some of these things and go forward so we can get to the videos. But you have to think some of these images, if they were in other cultures, would they be acceptable? Probably not, right? That kind of speaks for itself. And so what activism, in another way, is sports. Some indigenous people teamed up with a variety of other cultures, started to combat them with their own. They said, hey, maybe we can just try this the other way. So we've done the art, we've done the humor, we've done the activism, we've done the boycotts, we've done the walks, we've done the marches. Maybe we just need to throw it back in someone else's face and say, hey, do you like it when it looks like this? And that's an actual clothing line, as is this one. And I think that Fighting Whiteys was, and that's actually their legit slogan, I think you can look it up online, formed, I want to say, maybe by a mixture of an indigenous and a variety of background students that were on a basketball team and were overseeing imagery and the disrespect. What's funny is though, even though, again, we've gone through all this history and bringing us up to 2016, and then we had the World Series, right? So you're thinking, okay, maybe there's going to be some evolution in the type of imagery that we're seeing through sports, and it kind of hasn't. It hasn't evolved. So that's interesting in terms of activism and the different dynamics that will be brought forth from that in all areas. The image on the left is actually, I think, 2016 as well. So it's not in sports, and I'm an athlete and I'm a coach, right? So I'm disproportionately, I see a lot of sports imagery, maybe more so than I see other imagery. And then it's not just on the professional level, it starts with the kids, right? A lot of schools, I don't say the word really, Redskin or R word, but a lot of schools have this particular logo. So you see these kids like that could easily be my kids, and they're just like so set on calling their school this name. So it's kind of crazy because you're like, well, hey, that's actually a racial slur, and it wouldn't work for any other group of people. And again, how do all of these images, what we're keeping in the back of our mind before we get to No Dapple, is how do all these images affect the discussion and the discourse surrounding like the pipeline and how people look at indigenous people today? So again, these are all schools, high schools, colleges, all recently. All over. So this is not just like one particular area of the country, right? It's all over. A lot of Trail of Tears references, and the Sioux suck, and the Sioux are drunks. So these are people your age, right? So it's like, how will you confront, and what type of courage will you have in terms of these conversations of justice? And are we going to only have dynamic conversations about maybe one group of people or one socioeconomic level, or is it going to be a more justice for all type of situation? Really quickly, when I was here, there was something called Chief Illini, which was a person that would dress up like this, until a great woman, again, activist, Charlene Teeters, she's a person that I'll put on the sheet that I send to Catherine, stood up and said, hey, what the heck are you thinking? This is ridiculous. And eventually, they retired the chief. They're very upset about it. So here's a question. When you get rid of some of these mascots, but you don't have those discussions, what progress are you making? So you might get rid of it, but do the sentiments still stay there, right? Do we still have those same thoughts and images ingrained into our brains? So there has to be, the learning process has to be there as well, right? It can't just be about taking away the images. And then also, where do you draw the line between us and the immigrant population? Are you coming from a place of, oops, that snuck in there. Are you coming from a place of compassion and understanding and saying, where do you draw the line between Indigenous or our Mexican brothers and sisters? There's an entire movement specifically related to the mascot. It's changethemascot.org, an entire movement. I would encourage you to look up that website as well. And it's funny to see marching with Dr. King marching, because I was just down at the March for Women, the Women's March on DC this weekend. I don't know, did anyone go, or did you hear it? You were there? You were there? Was it the Philly one? Awesome, right? So I didn't even, honestly, I totally underestimated the power of just, right? As soon as you talk about it, like our faces light up. I hope there's going to be another one someday so I can get all my kids there. So moving into a little bit of politics, what has maybe things you can look into for coursework? What was President Obama's interaction with Indigenous people? He formed Generation Indigenous. If you go on whitehouse.gov, you probably won't see any of these sites anymore. But I do believe they moved them possibly, I'm not sure, to the Obama Foundation or another site, so they kept a lot of this information. And so he really had connection with Indigenous people, Indigenous leaders, as did First Lady Michelle Obama. And a lot of forums, hey, come on in. And a lot of interaction with the Indigenous people. Okay. So that's kind of a background of myself, starting, the Native American Student Association here, what the images look like, and let's jump into No DAPL. So now that we have that kind of framework. And this is about, I'll cut it off at 7 minutes. There's so much out there on social media, and like I said, I hope you get up and stay in contact with the Peace and Justice Department here at Villanova, because I'm going to send the director some links of some things that you can get involved in. It has some interesting connects to what's going on politically, right? So Winona LaDuke ran on a third-party ticket with Ralph Nader. She was his running mate. I believe she's a Harvard Law grad as well, activist for decades. I think I've only met her once, but of course I was in awe of her. And she's so down to earth and amazing. So Winona LaDuke is a great person to follow. Chase Iron Eyes is a great person to follow. A gentleman named Dallas Goldtooth of Environmental Action Network. These are all people that are out there. Many of my friends have been out there as well. And we work on, just having all sorts of technical difficulties today. We're working on a lot of divestment. So from the business standpoint, let's say I had my car loan through Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is involved with the pipeline, so I've divested from Wells Fargo, right? Not the big, is just me doing it the biggest thing? No, but it's something that you can look into, whether you end up working for a company. I work for University of California at San Diego. And so where is the money that's going into my 401k? Where are those investments going? That's a critical thing that I can do to be involved in. Where is my car loan coming from? Maybe when you get older, your mortgage, where is that coming from? And where is that money being funneled to? There was a National Day of Action, which that was the video, and this is my friend Gina Tiger Medueno, and we organized massive bank pullouts, switching over to credit unions that are run by us instead of larger corporations. So we're controlling where our money is going into. I was so excited finally to buy a Range Rover because I just really always wanted one, and I tried to get one that was like slightly fuel conscious, and luckily I had a couple of mechanical issues, so I said, you know what, it's time. I'm tired of feeding into this, and I'm tired of polluting the environment, and now I have a Prius. And it's awesome, and it's great. And I literally have only put gas in it once in a month and a half, as does pretty much everyone in California. So what is my impact and what is my carbon footprint going to be? And again, getting back to those intersects of politics and how Winona LaDuke ran as a third-party candidate, similar to Jill Stein, getting involved with your age group and your demographic and ensuring that you're voting, because like I said, if you look at the current White House administration website, their first priority, they have a list of top 7 priorities, right? So right now, I don't think there's anything about LGBT. There's probably nothing about Native American affairs, obviously. And I'm sure some form of that will come back, right? But the top priority they have is drilling. It's drilling on public land. So this is their top priority. So what was it? I think 2 days ago, had a lot of, I'm sorry, Jules, texts. And why was that? Because the current administration signed executive orders for whatever validity they might have to fast track not just the DAPL pipeline, but Keystone. So we had done all this work and killed Keystone, right? And now Keystone's just that quickly right back on the table to come through. And a lot of these pipelines are all throughout the country. Like if you see a map, they're everywhere. But what is your generation going to do about that? As I get older or I'm moving, a lot of my friends are starting to have kids and they're getting pulled away for that, a lot of activism. We're turning around to you guys and saying, hey, like you're the next generation. We need you to stand up and talk about divestment and where you're putting your money. Where is Villanova putting their money, you know? Where are their workers that work here? Where are they invested in? And challenging and questioning them. Somewhat eerie, right? 1993, you can kind of forecast to someone who now has the ability to take that type of rhetoric, that type of language, and that type of imagery, all the stuff we were talking about, right? And put that into action. So potentially with terrifying consequences, and for everyone, because the environment's for everyone, right? We're just stewards of the environment. Natives have been and always will be, but it really impacts everyone. So we have to pay attention. Right? And we have to be involved, and we can't just and sit back and not be active. And you can make some posts on I don't know, whatever is cool nowadays. You can make some posts on, you know, social media, and that's great. But how can you get involved? And I'm going to send some materials and consolidate some links and send them to Peace and Justice. Feel free to stop by. Do you guys know where that is on campus? Core Hall. They used to be in a little basement in the quad, so they've kind of expanded. It was like you go do your laundry, you go save the world, and you come back and do some more laundry, and it was like very close-knit. So they were expanding, so that's good. Moving forward, progress moving forward is a good place to go, not moving backwards for this country. And to be involved, because we had ideas about this type of ideology that was permanent, and there was a warning, 1993, right? Eons ago, way ago. Even I was a little kid, a long time ago. And we had all this time to kind of deal with this narrative and this imagery, and we didn't, and we haven't, and now this is what we're dealing with, right? So, especially if you're freshmen, I want to say, get involved with as many things as you can. Stay here as long as you can. Knock out maybe your grad school if you can. The real world, that's fine. You know, you can get to that later. That's a little bit of advice for you, is just to stay here and get involved in every organization. I was involved with Native American Student Association. Again, if you want to restart that, you can. I can give you my email, come and talk to me after. I was involved, I was a Division I athlete with track. I did Marines as well for 4 years. My GPA reflects all of that. And, you know, I sucked the life out of Villanova when I was here. I can't walk 5 steps without seeing a place that I hopefully didn't have some small impact on. When I was here, BET wasn't even allowed to be shown on campus. We had to fight for that. And pre-our generation, there were other people that had to fight for other things. I had to, like I said, we had to sit in that room, and I said, guess what? I'm gonna sit here until we celebrate Dr. King Day. And then that happened. So one person, literally, this whole ripple of hope thing, can totally change it. Like, that's why, part of the reason why we have, because of Dr. Nance, myself, Christine Gerchow, that's why we have today what we're celebrating, the entire Freedom School. And that came from just the couple of us. That's it. But that's all that it takes to make a positive and everlasting change. So get involved, do everything you can while you're at Villanova, look at your own carbon footprint. If you're able to, just even one day, instead of grabbing a water bottle, grab your reusable one, because all plastic is made from what? Do we know? It's a 3-letter word that we're trying to stop going the pipeline. Oil. All plastic is made from oil. Didn't even know that until I was way out of school. So it's like everything from plastic is made from oil. So reusable bottles, they take, I think, about this much oil to make, especially if they're shipping them internationally. That's I don't know what Villanova's stance is on the reusable bottles, but that's a real easy thing to do out in California. We just have these water stations everywhere. And you think, okay, so now we have these water stations everywhere. What else can we do? So with the plastic forks and knives, you know, we've changed that. Surfrider has these little reusable plastic forks and knives, and you'd be amazed how much, you know, plastic can be saved. It's so incredible. They're bamboo. I wash them, and then literally, I only got silverware and stuff at home like a couple weeks ago, because I would just keep, I'm like, well, wait, if I'm using them today, I can use them tomorrow. If I use them tomorrow, I can use them Wednesday. It's gonna get awkward when I have like a house party or something. So then I finally bought some real silverware. But I just looked at that, I'm like, wow, look at all this plastic that I'm saving. And look at all the plastic for the kids when I'm out there coaching that we're saving. And if all the plastic's coming from oil, you have a real opportunity to change the face of how this oil industry works. So just be the change that you want to be in the world. That's my spiel. Thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties. I love seeing you, and I'm going to let you go, but please come up and talk to me after if you have any questions, okay? All right, love.